Hello Internet! I'm Hazel and today I'm going to be going over what we know about Shadow Priests in Legion. We'll take a look at the original preview blog post, data mine talents and skills, and the artifact weapon. Of course, it's very early in development and everything is subject to change, so all we're really looking for is just to get a feel for where things are headed. The full original blog post by Blizzard is linked in the description below this video. The blog post starts by fleshing out the image of the Shadow Priest fantasy. As they stand right now, Shadow Priests are a fairly vague sort of dark priest with allusions to gothic themes like vampirism, mind control, and spreading disease. They want to refocus that fantasy to a more Lovecraftian-themed dark cultist worshipping the old gods, driving themselves to insanity in order to gain devastating power. This new fantasy is reflected in both the new mechanics of the Shadow Priest and some aesthetic effects. The most significant changes are based in our new resource, Insanity, and the transformation effect Voidform. The blog reads, a new resource, Insanity, provides a better fit for Shadow, having more granularity and gameplay that emphasizes the immense but fleeting power that the Void offers. Mind Blast, Shadowward Pain, and Vampiric Touch will build Insanity. Reaching maximum Insanity will transform Shadow form into Void form, giving the Shadow Priest access to stronger Void magic, but it's unable to be maintained indefinitely. This should make for interesting gameplay as Shadow Priests try to manipulate the height of their Insanity as long as possible. Outside of Insanity, we'll continue to rely heavily on dots. We'll also be unable to use any holy spells at any time. Instead, they're giving us Shadow Mend and Power Word Shield as primary healing tools. Let's take a look at the Void form specifics. It's passive, meaning that you don't get to activate it yourself like Demon form. It'll happen when you reach 100 Insanity and transform your mind spells into Void spells. It'll also increase your shadow damage done by 30%. While in Void form, you'll gain 2% haste every 1 second. This haste will also persist for 20 seconds after Void form ends. Void form causes your Insanity to constantly drain faster and faster until completely drained and Void form ends. They talked a bit about Void form at BlizzCon, and it sounds like it's going to visually look super cool. You may get corruption-style old god tentacles out of places. I'm curious to see if this means no more Dark Angel wings glyph. It doesn't really fit with the new Shadow Priest vision, but my wings are so pretty. They've also given us information on our new core abilities. These have some minor changes, most notably Vampiric Touch now giving you healing each tick. It looks like Devouring Plague is completely gone, but Vampiric Touch should fill that need. Mind Flay will work like normal and transform into Void Flay during Void form. This will presumably have a different spell effect, perhaps the one used by Insanity right now. Void Flay will also extend your Shadowward Pain duration on the target. Mind Blast is mostly the same and will generate 15 Insanity. In Void form, its cooldown is halved and it'll extend your Vampiric Touch by 3 seconds. Vampiric Touch will generate 3 Insanity per tick, still horrors the Dispeller if dispelled, and apparently will cause huge shadow damage over 24 seconds. You get healed for each point of that damage. This sounds like awesome self-healing, especially in multi-target situations. Shadowward Pain is still instant, still has a tiny damage pop when you apply it, and will generate 3 Insanity per tick. With this information, it sounds like our basic rotation will be keeping up dots and using Mind Blast on cooldown while out of Void form to generate Insanity. Within Void form, we'll alternate between Void Blast and Void Flay to maintain our dots and pump out damage. In Legion, we're getting an all-new mastery called Madness. It'll increase both the damage and Insanity generation of your Mind Blast, dots, and Shadowward Death by roughly 20% with typical gear. Next, let's look at some data mined spell changes. Everything is obviously very subject to change. If these tooltips look janky, it's because they're not done yet. For now, I'm leaving out changes to the levels that you get stuff at. Let's get into it. Fade still removes your threat and now will always reduce your damage taken by 10% for 10 seconds, just like the glyphed version on Live. Leap of Faith and Levitate are supposedly for Holy and Dis priests only. I'm personally a little bummed out. How am I supposed to puppet master my raid around now? Prayer of Mending and Resurrection are both also off limits to Shadow. Taking away res is kinda weird, but I hear we're all getting mass res. There's some sad names in the removed list too. Fear Word, Power Word Fortitude, and Cascade have all been axed, for all specs. Many fond years of buffing random strangers on boats to Stormwind is going to come to an end for me. As a brand new heal, we're getting Shadow Mend. Wrap an ally in shadows which will heal them at a price. The ally will get a dot which deals 10% of the heal every second, until they've taken half of the value of the heal worth of damage from any source. It'll drain up to 10 insanity if you have any. I guess if you're empty on insanity, then it's free? This has some interesting implications for PvP. Dotting yourself makes you basically immune to breakable CC, although you could just get your dot damaged away. Fascinating. Power Infusion is becoming shadow only, will still increase haste, and it'll also increase your insanity gen by 25%. Psychic Scream is for shadow and discipline only, and has a 1-minute cooldown. A new talent called Psychic Voice will bring that back down to 30 seconds if chosen. Twist of Fate will increase your damage and healing by 20%, up from 15%. And Auspicious Spirits no longer grants Shadow Orbs, which makes sense because those aren't a thing anymore. Dispersion will only reduce damage taken by 60%, down from 90%, and no longer clears snares or makes you immune to them. It can still be cast while stunned, feared, or silenced. Psychic Horror is now a 4-second stun. Shadow Word Death will deal only 67.5% of spell power instead of 270%. It'll generate 30 insanity if the target dies. There's a new talent we'll get to later that makes this a tiny bit less gross. Mind Spike is now a level 100 talent and has seen major change. We'll look at the talents next. The talent tree is being completely overhauled in Legion, with new spells everywhere and the old ones shuffled around. Keep in mind that this is completely separate from the PvP talent tree for Shadow Priests, which I'll get into in its own video. On the level 15 tier, we'll choose between Twist of Fate, Fortress of the Mind, and Shadow Word Void. Twist of Fate is exactly as it stands right now, except a tiny bit stronger. This talent has been massively dominant throughout Warlords, so it'll be interesting to see it competing with some new options. Fortress of the Mind is a passive ability that makes your Mind Flay and Mind Blast do 10% more damage, while generating 20% more insanity. Shadow Word Void is a new active ability with 3 charges and a 20-second recharge time. It's essentially another version of Mind Blast, except with double the insanity generation, and you can stockpile up to 3 of them. It looks like Twist of Fate will still be good on ad fights. I can see using Fortress of the Mind for good sustained damage and ease of use, while Shadow Word Void looks like it'll be strong for fights with distinct burn phases. It's cool to see such gameplay altering talents on an early tier like this. At level 30, we choose between Mania, Body and Soul, and Masochism. Mania is a pretty straightforward mobility talent, increasing your movement speed by 1% for each 5 insanity that you have. Body and Soul is identical to the current model. The wording makes it a little iffy as to whether we as Shadow Priests will actually keep Leap of Faith or not. And Masochism isn't a movement talent at all. It removes the damage component from Shadow Mend when cast on yourself, which seems stronger for raiding than for PvP. Because these talent trees are early and not done yet, I wouldn't be surprised to see changes made to this row. It seems a little off. At level 45, we get some CC talents. Shining Force is a new, instant cast ability on a 1-minute cooldown. It knocks back nearby enemies and slows them for 3 seconds, not unlike Elemental Shaman's Thunderstorm. Psychic Voice is a passive talent that'll reduce your Psychic Scream's cooldown from its new 1 minute back down to 30 seconds. Dominate Mind is basically the same and will probably see just as little use. I feel like we're hanging on to that one for nostalgia's sake at this point. At level 60, we see some more damage talents. Void Lord is a passive enhancement to your Void form. It brings your shadow damage buff from 30% to 40% and causes your absorbs and healing to also benefit from that. Reaper of Souls makes your Shadow Word Death usable at 35% health rather than 20%, and lets it grant insanity even when it doesn't kill something. Given how annoying it is to get killing blows while raiding, this is a tempting option. The last talent, Dark Visions, causes your dots to do 20% more damage if cast above 50% insanity. This one sounds like the high skill cap option with high reward. If you still have those strong dots up when you get into Void form and can then extend them with Void Blast and Void Flay, you're cooking up some serious damage. Level 75 brings us some familiar options. Sanlian makes your Vampiric Embrace do 20% more healing and buffs your Vampiric Touch by 20% also. This will make for some serious self and raid healing on multi-target fights. Auspicious Spirits increases your apparition damage by 100% and seems kind of crappy after the loss of Shadow Orbs. I can't see wanting to hoard crit for just the one talent when Mastery and Haste will have so many benefits. Shadowy Insight gives your Shadow Word Pain a 10% chance to proc a Mind Blast cooldown reset. It doesn't say anything about making that Mind Blast instant like it used to. How good Shadowy Insight is depends on how GCD starved we end up being. At level 90, we get some cooldowns that should help you generate insanity and get into Void form faster. Power Infusion is a 2-minute cooldown, giving you 25% extra haste and insanity generation for 20 seconds. Mindbender is a 1-minute cooldown that will give you 2 insanity when the Mindbender attacks. It also looks like it might still grant mana, which is pretty weird. Oblivion is a straightforward 2-minute cooldown that instantly gives you 100 insanity. All of these give us some measure of control over when we pop into Void form, which will be nice for burst phases such as Bloodlust. At level 100, we get our most dramatic damage talents. Legacy of the Void causes our Mind Blast to buff our next Shadow Word ability by 50% and stacks up to 2 times. This can apply to Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Word Death, and presumably Shadow Word Void if you spec'd into that. Choosing the Mind Spike talent gives you Mind Spike to replace Mind Flay as a filler ability. Mind Spike will increase the damage of your next Mind Blast by 50%, stacking up to 5 times. The charge stacking can be read in 2 ways. I think it means that you can stock up on buffs for your next 5 Mind Blasts, but not save up to one really big one. It's hard to say. I'm also interested to see if this becomes Void Spike in Void form, and if that would increase Vampiric Touch duration like Void Flay does. The final and most awesome talent on this tree is called Surrender to Madness. It's a 10-minute cooldown, usable only in Void form. Surrender to the old gods, sacrificing your soul for ultimate power. Your abilities generate 300% more insanity until you exit Void form, then you die. That's the most metal thing I've ever seen. I'm sure somebody will find some ridiculously difficult way to abuse this for stupid amounts of damage, and I can't wait. The Shadow Priest artifact weapon has been a hot point of disappointment in the community. Many complain that it's too small and not a staff. Both of those things are true, but I think it's too early to cry big tears just yet. Let's take a look at Xal'atath, Blade of the Black Empire. For starters, the name is freaking awesome. I don't even know what the Black Empire is, but I totally want to go check it out. It's a void-honed blade that will truly terrify enemies. It's got a big blinking eyeball in it. It's curved like a small scythe, and there's some unidentified purple goop on the tip. I want it. The offhand is this neat little book with sharp edges and a perfectly respectable eyeball embedded in it also. I betcha this is where all the extra Demon Hunter eyes went. The quest to get it involves the Twilight Hammer and some old god shenanigans, which fits the new theme. Finally, check out these skins. There's so many! I like the darker ones myself. Anything with lots of eyeliner. We don't have much info on the class order hall yet, just the name and a couple of early screenshots. We'll be hanging out in Netherlight Temple, which has 3 separate sanctuaries for each priest spec. Sanctuary of the Void looks like this. And that's what we know so far about Shadow Priests and Legion. I'll be doing a separate video talking about what all this could mean for PvP, and looking over the new PvP talent tree. Let me know what you think about the direction Shadow Priests are heading in Legion, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.